Well, hello and welcome to the Photo Brigade podcast. I'm Robert Caplin, and I'm really pleased to have one of my good friends and mentors, Fred Conrad. How you doing, Fred?
I'm doing well, thank you.
You're going to have to talk a little closer into this puppy.
I will.
So Fred, for those that don't know, you are, I'm telling you who you are, a veteran photojournalist from the New York Times. You just completed a career, 38 years, almost 38 years, as a staffer,
Right.
And now you've just hit the freelance world.
It's a big change.
Welcome to the freelance world. Fred and you and I met back when I was just a wee intern. That was now 10 years ago, believe it or not.
Right out of college.
Right out of college.
Right
Literally,
out of college.
I missed my, what do you call it? I missed my
graduation
because of it. I didn't get to go through commencement, but I feel it was more important to hit the ground running.
Yeah, well, it was interesting to see, like how eager and energetic you were, and also how green you were.
Oh yeah, well I definitely was. I was a Midwest boy, but
well, I was too. But,
yeah.
And Lord knows if someone had seen me in 1977 when I joined the Times, they would have said I was pretty green too.
Oh man, I wish you would have brought a photo of you from back then.
I had a beard.
You had a beard?
I had a beard.
And some more hair?
And a lot more hair.
So before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Adorama, which is where we're hosting this podcast right now. Thank you, Adorama. They're event space. You can check them out at adorama.com/events to see what they've got coming. Also, Canon Professional Services, great organization for helping out if you ever need help with your Canon products, repairs and whatnot. And then Tenba Bags, they make some great bags, and you guys can get a 10% discount if you go to tenba.com and use the promo code Photo Brigade. So that's that. Let me go ahead and pull up a few photos of yours. Where was it? We're going to start off with some World Trade Center action. But there we go. We want to kind of.
One of the interesting things about coming to New York for me, especially from the Midwest, there were a lot of tall buildings here.
Oh yeah,
and I was always, very interested in the architecture. And I remember taking this picture shortly after I joined the staff. The people sunbathing on this illegal beach, they actually had to climb a fence to get there, was built on the rubble of the excavation of the World Trade Towers, and it's now become Battery Park City.
It's incredible. I've always heard the stories that the excavation, the foundation that they had to dig up turned into an entire.
Yeah, no, they literally took it across the highway and dumped it into the river. Now, of course, the EPA and all sorts of ecology-minded folks wouldn't let that happen anymore. But in 1977, or actually it was earlier than that when they did it, it was no big deal.
Right.
What else were they going to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So. And of course, adding real estate to Manhattan is a huge. I mean, whoever scored that piece of land, I wonder who scored that piece of land actually. That's a good question. And why didn't we get a piece of that? It's like.
Well, all I know is that for many people, myself included, early on, the World Trade Towers had also become sort of an emotional anchor. I mean, every time you would see it as you would fly back to New York from an assignment, it was a signal that you were home.
Yeah.
And, despite the fact that most people never appreciated it as architecture,
right?
It became sort of an emotional anchor for people who lived in New York then.
Right.
And after the towers fell, the challenge for the Times and photographers who were covering the recovery was sort of difficult. I know the Times had a 1-year anniversary special section, and we tried to figure out, what we were going to say that hadn't been said, like before. And so we went through like the rituals of grief, what people kept.
Right.
And so the next picture, I think, is one that made the cover of that issue. And the little gold box is holds the ashes of this young girl's father.
Uh-huh.
And she put it in her trophy case. It's a very, very quiet picture.
Yeah.
Until you realize what it is.
Exactly, yeah.
And then 5 years later, when everybody was saying, why isn't anything built yet?
Right.
They ran a completely different section with a completely different theme, as to, where they were now. And so this I took, I think, on a speed graphic with, tilting the lens back.
So this is the real tilt shift effect. This is not.
Yeah, no, this
is not SLR. This is not Instagram. This is the real deal.
This is 4x5 speed graphic.
This is one of the things that I really enjoyed about you. The mentorship that we had. You really taught me that a camera is just a tool, and there's many different. How many different cameras do you think you used over the years? Different formats, I should say.
Everything from 8x10 to well, for me, like using different cameras was a way of exploring, the history of photography.
Right.
And years ago, when I started doing medium format portraiture, like for different sections in the Times, it really made me aware of different techniques, different methods.
Right.
And if you go to the next picture, we did a whole series, like this last year, like on the workers who actually are building the buildings at the World Trade Center site. And it was such an interesting project because when I first started, I came down with all sorts of lights, and assistants, and set up, what I thought would be like really dramatic lighting. And it was just a total failure.
Uh-huh.
That
happens.
And I said, how did I screw this up? I mean, these people have such incredible faces.
Uh-huh.
And then I realized I forgot what made their faces great, which was their eyes. And so I went with a medium format camera with a very high, with a speed lens, wide open, and just focus in on the eyes.
Right.
And all of a sudden it was completely different. The iconography of like their helmets was blurred but still there, but you got an idea of like who these people really were.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of the intriguing part about working at the Times, because you could be creative, but it was always a collaboration.
Right.
And so on the final product that went up on the web for this, it was a combination of audio that someone else had collected.
Right.
Like designing of a grid. And so you could tap on each one's face, and for a couple dozen of them, you'd actually hear their voice in their story.
Yeah.
And it was sort of a really wonderful creative addition to what's possible, like with photography and
so this was
audio.
Around what time did you do this multimedia? We don't have the multimedia here, but it was around 2005 or 6? Were you saying?
No. This was like 2 years ago.
Oh, this was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you said 5 years ago, but that was the first photo.
This I think was like on the.
I really love how just multimedia really opens things, just like we're doing with the podcast here. You know, we started with audio and then merging it now with video, and now that we can actually show photos, hear the voice, see the person talking, it's really
it's something that I enjoyed doing, like at the Times, and it's something that I'm learning more now that I'm freelancing, because it's such an integral part of what clients really want.
Yeah.
And if you don't have really good audio, you're in trouble.
I've learned, and that's
because
why
the greatest picture in the world isn't going to save you.
Well, I should also mention Rode microphones. We should get you hooked up with some Rode microphones for your audio gathering.
I have two.
You already have. You have two, or you have some?
No, I have two.
You have two. Okay. So let's kind of back up a little bit and talk. I'd like to talk about your background, because I know growing up in the Midwest, I had always wanted to, work my way up and get to eventually where I did get, which is New York, working for the New York Times, the internship, and my only times I've ever been a staff photographer are during my internships. I've done maybe 3 or 4 internships prior to where I am now, and I don't really know so much about your background. Were you a staffer before this, freelancer before this? How did you get to where you started at the New York Times?
Well, I went to the University of Michigan, and I studied photography in the art school. I mean, you can moan because you're from Ohio, but I actually attempted.
I did hold it back.
I actually toured, like Ohio University, and thought very hard about going there, but I couldn't afford it.
Oh.
So I had to go to my state school.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I graduated, I moved to New York. I had a Volkswagen Bug. I'd made, I think $500 selling pictures for my portfolio.
Oh.
To I think McGraw-Hill Publishing and Time Inc.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know anything.
Uh-huh. You should have just came and wing it, right?
And when I think back now about how unprepared I was for a career in photography, I was like, what was I thinking? I mean, I knew how to take pictures, but I really had no idea about, lighting. I had no idea about, the industry. And so when I see young kids now, like starting out, they know so much more than I did.
Well, that might be true, but also a lot of time has passed since you started. The difference between when you started and when people are starting now,
Right.
I mean, just with the social media and
I know.
websites.
Yeah.
And we were having a discussion about this just
Yeah.
before. You said, "Did you see my website?" I said, "Well, we got to get you hooked up with Photo Shelter is what we need to do."
Well, what I did, one of my clients was the New York Times.
Uh-huh.
And the reason I started working or freelancing for the Times is I had a car.
Oh, yeah.
Most other freelance photographers didn't have cars.
Mm-hmm.
And so the original sections hired me at $49.95 an assignment.
$49.95.
An assignment. And of course, the editor at the Times would figure out a way geographically for me to do 3 assignments in one day.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Which would bring me up to like what was then the ASMP rates. Back in 1973.
Uh-huh.
And so I got to learn the geography of the metropolitan area very, very well.
Yeah.
My back seat was filled with, like laminated maps of every county, like around New York City. And when the Times went to a 4-section paper and included regionals as part of that, that's when I was hired. And my stint in the regionals, I think, lasted a month. The deputy photo editor at the time insisted that I work on Sundays. Mm-hmm. And after getting a page 1 picture 4 weeks in a row, they said, he's off regionals.
He's off regionals. So there still are regional. I guess I just don't know so much about them because I live in Manhattan.
Back when I started, it was like the BQLI section, Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island.
Oh, wow, okay.
And then it became, Westchester and New Jersey and Connecticut.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And now all of that has dwindled down into the one section, which is published locally on Sundays, the city section.
Right.
So it's, what happened when the Times, expanded and went national and started with their 4-section papers, it opened up all sorts of opportunities. One of the things that started me doing portraits really started when the Arts and Leisure photo editor had assigned a freelancer to photograph John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
What?
And I was like, I went to him and I said, why did you do that? Why didn't you think of me? He says, well, you don't use strobes and umbrellas. And I said, well, I better learn how.
I better learn how.
And I did.
Yeah.
And, like throughout the 80s and, like in the 90s when the sections were doing, like large portraiture, like in the financial sections, it was really, like an interesting opportunity for me. I mean, this picture was taken, I think in the, out in Queens at the Scalamandre factory when they were, they were giving their old Jacquard looms away to the Smithsonian.
Uh-huh.
And these were like the last workers that were essentially working on century-old looms.
Oh, wow.
In Queens.
And
but
so something like this, it almost
4 or 5.
Is this natural light a window or is this a lit portrait?
No, that's a lit portrait. but it's 4x5 with PN Polaroid film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never really used so much film. The last time I used film, believe it or not, you were talking about the 9/11 photographs. When I was an intern, they also, I think it was the 5-year. It was part of this. The city section did a big thing, and I was kind of inspired to use film, I think, a lot by you, and I used a Holga, and I went around and photographed still standing memorials to 9/11 at that time in 2005-ish or whenever it was, and they ended up running a contact sheet. Like I gave the editor Ivar the contact sheet and I said, "Here's what I shot," and he's like, "Oh, let's just run it as it is." And it was the whole cover of the city section. I was really excited about that. Like the first and last time I've used film, probably.
Well, it's probably because they didn't have a printer to print the negative.
Yeah, when I was an intern, that was the last year, I think, of the lab. There was a lab where you could just drop off your film and they would do everything for you. Not so much anymore.
Well, now, I mean, like they have to scan it, digitize it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was shot, like on 120 film.
120,
and, so, but it, it was scanned, like it never really printed.
Yeah.
But that's digital. My gosh, how did that squeak in there?
There? And when you shoot digital, what do you usually shoot?
Mostly Canon.
Yeah.
With a variety of different, camera bodies.
Do you typically use like a 5D or bigger bodies or?
I really started to like the what is it, the 1DX?
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's so quick, but it's also so heavy.
When you say quick, do you mean shutter speed? Like that kind of quick, or?
I mean, it's a wonderful camera, and the fact that you can shoot raw so quickly,
right?
Like on a burst. It's a great camera. But the other camera that I'm using now is like the 6D. Because it has the built-in wireless.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's what I use, too. I've actually stopped using my 5.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't stopped using it. I use them both. But a lot of the time, I really like small cameras.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my thing. I would much prefer to shoot 3 frames a second rather than 20 frames a second.
Yeah, no, I mean, lately I've been, using, like the 6D and downloading all of it to my iPhone, even as a RAW, and then putting it up on Instagram.
Oh,
or Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we did like the dog show this last year.
Yeah, that's another thing. Here, let's quickly jump over to the dog show. Where do we see this? I got dogs. It's probably the one that says dogs. Okay. This is something you do regularly, the dog show.
Well, every year I try to do something different.
Uh-huh.
I mean, one year we tried to photograph, like all the different dog breeds, and we couldn't. Just like logistically, I needed another studio, but behind the scenes is like so much fun. And
that's the only fun part about it, I think.
It's such a wonderful, passionate, bizarre setting, and these people are just so passionate about their dogs. You can't help but find great images.
Yeah, I mean it's. Now I remember. Obviously, this is this year's gallery?
This was last year. Last year we did a whole thing on the juniors. This is one of the juniors. And these are young teenagers who come from around the country. They're invited, and they compete against each other. But what these young women do, these are kids that are like 14, 15 years old. They come the day before,
right? And
they go to Macy's, and they buy these very matronly-looking suits because they can't find them anywhere else in America. So I love this, like sitting with her Uggs, and her, like suit that she's probably only had for 2 days.
Right. In her Uggs, right. Now I remember also years back you photographed like portraits on like a white backdrop or something of all the winners, if I remember correctly.
I think there might be something coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, we actually went out of our way to do like my dog shot by Avedon.
Right, exactly. I was wondering, that must have been the most hectic shoot ever. I couldn't imagine a more hectic shoot.
It was insane. I mean, the previous picture, the woman says, "Would you like to see my dog sit?" It's like, duh. It's like, oh yeah, no, Burley, you'll want to see this. And once she did, I said, oh yeah, I want to see your dog sit. So.
I can remember some photos because I think the sports section ran like photos like these.
Oh yeah,
and there were some. I imagine that
they did a whole page. I think it was called and what was, we had attempted to do all of them, and we didn't do all of them, and then the editor said, well, if you don't have all of them, we're not going to run any pictures. And the art director saved my tail. He came up with this great headline. He said, 101 Dalmatian. And so there was a picture of 101 dogs on the back page.
Oh, that's perfect.
Just with like a little bit of type.
But you didn't. You missed a couple, and the reason was why?
Well,
there's how it ran.
No.
No, that's not how it ran.
This was just the contact sheet of of some of the dogs. There's another contact sheet. I think we ended up with like 140 dogs, but the total was like 187.
Uh-huh.
The sports department had decided to run 2 unflattering stories prior to the dog show. One about whether or not the judging was legitimate, and the other one critical of the AKC. At which point, people boycotted the New York Times.
Oh.
And so, like the first day, we were scrambling. The second day, when they kind of liked me a little bit better, and we got more, but we didn't get all of them.
Right.
So that's one quest out there that someone someday should get.
You don't mess with the dog show. They will retaliate.
Well, it's a very tight group.
There was one that I remember. I think you might have given me this advice. I covered the dog show once for the Times, and I was kind of. You told me, or I was kind of tasked with the idea of, try to find dogs and dog owners that like look alike or dress alike or something like that. And this kind of reminded me of it for some reason.
Yes. No, in fact, this year, I mean, one of the things we did prior to the dog show for social media was an online matching game.
Uh-huh.
And we photographed 24 dogs and their owners separately and together.
Uh-huh.
And the dog portrait would come up. Beneath would be 4 dog owners, and you would have to match the owner to the dog.
Uh-huh.
And they chose 12 dogs, like for the online matching game. I didn't see it until Monday evening.
Uh-huh.
I shot it on Sunday. On Monday evening, I took the quiz, and I only got 10 out of the 12.
Goodness. I think we've gotten through them all now.
Yeah.
You also do. I don't think that we have a gallery of them, but I remember you seem to regularly do a portrait series after the New York Marathon.
Is there any marathon pictures in there?
I don't know if you've gotten any.
Go up to portraits.
Portraits.
We got a few marathon pictures in here. Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, here, start.
Okay, we'll just start from here.
Start from here.
Okay.
Yeah, one year we what they wanted to do in the sports section, since they regularly print all of the names of the finishers,
right,
which takes
forever. Yeah.
Well, I think it takes half a dozen pages.
Oh, yeah.
In the newspaper.
Break it up a bit. Yeah.
So they need to break it up.
Yeah.
And so they had a double truck, and they ran 11 4x5, and these portraits were done of the Achilles running team.
Uh-huh.
And these are people, like with, amputees
right.
for the most part. Many of them, this group were all ex-military. I mean, this one guy had lost his leg, like in Vietnam, and his buddy, who was a federal judge, had also lost his leg in Vietnam.
Wow.
And so they were in, like hand
And this
cranks.
was right after they finished, or was this before?
No, this is before.
Okay.
Believe me, after they finished, they're very different looking. They're exhausted.
Oh, man. One of my favorite things, I actually live up on the Upper West Side, and right kind of where everything ends. So one of my favorite things to do is, I used to cover the marathon more often for the Times and stuff, but I haven't in the last few years. But if I'm around during it, I always just walk out and then just walk against the flow in Central Park as they're coming against you.
Oh, it's marvelous. Keep going. There are a couple more here. Yeah.
This is the scene,
I mean, the scene after the finish is so otherworldly.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
and sometimes it's freezing cold, and these people are sweating still.
Right. But, well, there are some pictures I can't show because there's a certain area at the finish line which is like the barf zone. Mm-hmm. Because they're handed Gatorade, like along with their, like their nylon blankets and everything else.
Right.
And once the Gatorade hits their stomachs, about 1 in 6, it all comes up.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's one side of walkway that you don't walk on because it's so slippery.
Oh gosh, it's
gross.
You know what's also funny is it's like cliche as well. I remember shooting a portion in Brooklyn, and they give out the water, the Gatorade, and bananas, and I'm like on the marathon route. I'm not outside the gates and everything, and I'm walking along, and I slipped on a banana peel. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never done that, and of course I did, because they just take half a banana, eat it, and throw it on the ground.
I know.
So it was pretty funny. So okay, so I want to. These were portraits. So we started going through the portraits a minute ago.
Let's start with Redford here.
Yeah, I want to full screen them. So Redford, this is a great. This is obviously recent then.
Yeah. He had come up with a movie a couple years ago with hardly any dialogue, where he's on a boat. And there was all sorts of buzz that he was going to be nominated for an Academy Award. And so they sent me out to Utah with all my lights, no assistant. And I get there, and he says, "I'll give you 15 minutes."
I hate that. Yeah, that's actually more than I would have expected.
And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Look, I'm serious. It'll only be 15 minutes, but I will give you my devoted attention for 15 minutes, and then it's over."
Was that including or after? Was that including setup?
No. I had all day to set up, and he was
good.
doing, video and makeup and everything else. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do?
What am I going to do? Yeah.
I ended up doing 3 setups.
Yeah.
And by the time I finished, I was like drenching in sweat. And he came over and complimented me. He says, "You really are very quick."
You were very quick. Yeah.
I was like, duh.
Well, it's funny.
Making me go through all the hoops.
It's funny you say that, because I think, I interned at the LA Times before I did at the New York Times, so I had that experience with some celebrity portraiture. Damon Winter was actually the first photographer I went out with while I was on, so of course he's really great at what he does. But I went on an assignment with you once because, like I said, you were my mentor while I was interning, and I forget who it was, but it was the same sort of like meet the person in a hotel room and try to make a picture in there. And it was just so fun to watch how you spoke, had brought up anecdotes. You really taught me how to really talk to the people and just make them comfortable. And you made this woman so comfortable. You're like, well, so I've got this idea about how about you get into the bathtub. And you took it and it was like, she's like, "Oh, really?" You're like, yeah. Not like with water or anything, but it was one of these fancy bathtubs in a hotel.
God, I wish we had the picture.
Oh, yeah, but it actually inspired me. I'm going to pull up my website. I think I've got a photo of it somewhere. I'm just pulling up my website here, celebrity portraits. It inspired me to actually do that with Rainn Wilson. One year, I'm like, this is the story behind this photo. Same sort of thing. You get a few minutes with a celebrity for a press junket, and I told his people what I wanted to do: get him in the bathtub, acting like he's drinking wine, which was actually half Coke and half water because we didn't have any wine. And he walks in and says, "I heard you wanted to take nude photographs of me," and all I can say is I'm down. so that was my anecdote from your.
So someday you'll show me the outtakes.
Yeah, there were. Yeah, no outtakes on that one. So, okay, wow. And so you got actually a few of him. I noticed you have one further in.
Yeah.
All of his different looks. Well, FDNY, thank you.
No, he was actually at the Waldorf. And it was the presidential suite. And I went in. I had all my lights, but it had beautiful lighting, natural lighting. And I didn't even unpack my lights. And I actually had a young student from Ohio University.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Who was a friend of my daughter's from camp. And cool. I brought her along as an assistant just to see. Yeah. He was so nice to her. I was loading film, and I said, "Well, why don't you just take a roll?" And so Audrey Kelly, was like looking through the camera. She's never used a film camera, and I said, "No, just press the button. When it's in focus, okay?" Yeah. And I have to tell you, Brad Pitt was so gentle and kind to her, and it was like I could just see the red come into her face as she got flushed. But it was like a great experience. And, now she's out, like working.
Yeah.
And
do you remember, so speaking of that, you one of the things that I noticed from you when I was shooting with you back in the day was just sort of your comfort. You sort of don't get flustered anymore, or at least you don't show it. I mean, I'm sure we all get flustered at times.
I don't show it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things.
I do sweat.
Yeah, me too. I'm sweat, get real sweaty, and I'm like, I'm kind of shaking inside, but that's the way it goes. And I think that's one of the most important things when you're shooting celebrities like this is to not show it. Because if you look like you're freaking out, they're going to not take you seriously.
If you look like you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get less than 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah. That's absolutely true.
But, I think go to the next one.
Here we go.
Yeah, so, I mean, this picture ended up, on the cover of Vanity Fair.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he'd done a zombie movie.
Oh, yeah. What was that movie? I don't remember it.
Well,
World War Z.
World War Z.
Yeah.
Actually, and Vanity Fair wanted to make it a cover story. He was afraid that they would, it would be bad publicity. And so he withdrew any support, which meant that they couldn't send a photographer to photograph him, which means their only alternative are paparazzi shots.
Or buying a picture from the Times or something.
So they looked at this, and of course there's no, there was no approval of the, of the talent, attached to the picture. So they used this. The only difference is they turned the background to match his eyes.
Oh,
So
did they?
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And it made me think that the next time I get a chance, I will bring a blue backdrop.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Definitely. No, it's true. When you have that blue, because I have blue eyes, and and I'm wearing a blue shirt. You see? Don't my eyes pop? Okay.
You're learning every day.
So what's this shot?
No, this was, she was doing a play, and this was on the set, and again, it was sort of like, like after a rehearsal, and she spent more time with her makeup artist than she did with me.
Right.
But I got a chance to take, 2 or 3 different setups. It's over in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
But the film, like when you only have those 10 minutes, sometimes the film actually, makes the difference, like when it's reproduced. And that's why I still enjoy using, like medium format or 4:5 occasionally.
Right.
There is a difference.
Right. I can remember, this one is on the set, but you were talking about the groomers. A lot of these celebrities really like to make sure they look really good, and then they give you very little time. Do you obviously have been in this situation where you're shooting a celebrity and there are, 3, 4, 5 times as many like PR representatives, their entourage, their makeup people, all kind of like clamoring around you, wanting to see the pictures. How do you deal with those sorts of situations?
I generally try not to shoot digital.
There you go. That's a great way to do it.
I mean, if you're working commercially, you're going to be shooting tethered, and your client is in the other room,
right,
looking at a full screen,
right,
seeing
right,
every
right.
shot you take.
But that's your client.
Yeah, but when you're only having a few minutes, if there's an opportunity for them to really get in your face and look behind your camera and really bother you, it'll happen when you're shooting digital.
Yeah.
If you're shooting film, they have the confidence that you know what you're doing.
Oh yeah, right. That's interesting. Yeah.
And you just.
Do you feel that using the? I believe I was talking with David Burnett about this. Using the larger formats, using the old cameras,
Mm-hmm.
get the subjects to sort of be more invested and interested in what it is you're doing, and give you more time and more energy.
It can. David is a longtime friend, and we use, Super Ds.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, a process. And, that's
Sorry.
the other one's from the marathon too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
because it takes time.
Yeah.
And if people really don't have time, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
I mean, and you've gambled and lost.
Right.
That's happened to me on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
But for the most part, when you take the time and the effort to use a larger camera and you get them to agree to be part of that process, then it becomes a whole different situation. You'll see in a second. There's a couple more here.
At the end. So we've already gone through.
That's the marathon.
Oh, here we go.
Now, this is an example. This was an old colleague of mine at the New York Times who left years ago, Dudley Clendenin.
Sorry, your microphone's not tight or something. I don't know what's going on here.
It's okay. I'll hold it. And Dudley, was living in Baltimore and was dealing with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease.
Right.
And on public radio down in Baltimore, he was chronicling the progress of the disease. And a lot of people were very interested in it. And he wrote, an op-ed piece for the New York Times saying how when the time came that he needed a ventilator, that he would opt to commit suicide. And so it was a situation where they asked me to come and do a portrait, knowing that it would be the last. So what camera did you bring?
Right. Yeah.
So, this was done with a speed graphic with an Aero Ectar, and it took a lot of time. But he understood, and he was very, very patient. And so sometimes it's appropriate, but keep going. I'll show you some others here.
Yep.
Now, this is done on 4.5.
This is in Havana? Or?
This is in Havana.
It looks like Havana to me.
It does. And what's interesting is that for whatever reason, I'd worked very, very hard to get a legitimate visa to go to Cuba.
I did too. How did you get it? Professional research, or did you get like an actual journalistic visa?
Actually, Mario Cuomo was instrumental.
Really?
In getting the visa for me.
Wow.
I'd photographed Mario several times. And every time I take his picture, we would end up talking about baseball.
Oh.
And he was such an incredible fan of baseball. And we got to talking about Cuba on several occasions. And I had applied for a visa in advance because I wanted to go down there, because this was the first time there was like the International World Series of baseball.
So when give me a date around what?
Oh God, what was this? Maybe 10 years ago.
10 years ago. That's about when I went for the first and last time.
Yeah, and they wouldn't return any of my calls, and we're driving home. Phone rings. My wife answers the phone because I'm driving. And I said, "Who is it?" It says, "It's Mario Cuomo." And so I pulled over on 8th Avenue, and I said, "Hi." And he said, "Don't give up hope. They might call you tomorrow." And they did.
Very nice.
And I got a visa.
Very nice.
So I decided, is this going to be a one in a lifetime chance? What camera am I going to bring? Well, I brought a digital camera. But back then, I wasn't too hot on digital.
Right.
I was using it more as a Polaroid than anything else. And I went down with a Deerdorf.
Oh, wow.
And I was detained several times by the police. In Santa Clara, they detained us for like 4 hours, and we got really pissed off. So the next day, Cuba was playing Venezuela, and we drove around for hours trying to find the pitcher's home. And this was his home.
Oh, my goodness.
In fact, the little girl in the back, that's his daughter.
Wow.
And it's a shack.
Wow.
And I had a Photo battery operated strobe and a 4x5 Deerdorf, and the people are screaming at me in Spanish, and I didn't care. It's like, what, And my translator said, you better hurry up, First of all. Okay. And the minute he came on the TV, and I knew, like with the lens I had on the view camera, there weren't going to be any scanning lines. It was going to be perfect. I said, I got my picture. We can go. So go to the next one, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, this is also a picture. I mean, this is, in Cuba, people play baseball everywhere and all the time.
Yep.
I mean, this was just, in the sticks in a little town. But, that's,
Did you have an overall good experience? Because I had a really amazing. Oh, there's another nice shot.
Yeah. Yeah, this was done on 4.5, like in the dugout. And, sometimes when you use a big camera, it's like magic.
Mm-hmm.
And, as good as the digital cameras have gotten, I hope that young photographers take the time to at least familiarize themselves with a big camera just for the experience.
Yeah, that's what you said to me.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just, a lot of times what happens is that because the lens on the view camera is so much bigger,
Mm-hmm.
they're looking at themselves.
Oh, right. Yeah. You
So
can actually see yourself in it.
he's looking in the mirror.
Right.
Okay, and it's a completely different experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
So you actually did have issues with access in Cuba. When I went, it was in 2008.
and I had a legitimate visa, but I was taking out a big camera in
Right.
the middle of the street, and they
Yeah.
wanted to know who I was.
Yeah. At that point, I don't know. I'm not like fluent in Spanish, but at that point I knew very, very little Spanish.
Yeah.
And, I was just saying, I'm a journalist with the New York Times. I wasn't on any official assignment. I ended up getting a professional research visa, and I got it so easily because you get it through the Office of Foreign Assets Control.
Right.
Well, at least now you don't have to because that just got lifted, which is great.
Right.
But when I went, not a single person looked at the visa. When I came back from Cuba, I even wrote it on my customs form. I was in Cuba. No one said a word. I never had to show it once. And I was like, what's all the big deal?
I mean, did you fly out of Miami?
No, I actually went through Cancun.
Oh, okay. No, it was like so strange because I flew out of Miami,
Uh-huh.
and I had all this photo gear, and they charged me a lot of money.
Uh-huh.
And then I realized everybody else on the plane had tons of luggage,
Uh-huh.
and they were paying like these exorbitant rates,
Right.
And then on the trip back, nobody had anything.
Nobody had anything.
No luggage at all.
Yeah, yeah. All of it was being brought in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite an
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Is this still Cuba here?
What?
No?
What's that?
Is this still Cuba here?
No. This is the Bronx.
Oh, this is the Bronx.
This was a portrait of a transgender for a transgender story. So now this is an example of like a 10-minute portrait.
Mm-hmm.
And so Chiwetel, he literally had.
Is this one of these like junkets where you're in a hotel room type thing?
No, actually they were doing an interview at the New York Times.
Uh-huh.
And as an afterthought, the reporter comes in, like to the studio where I've set everything up.
Uh-huh.
And says, "I'm sorry, I ran, but they have a car downstairs that they have to get to in 10 minutes."
Uh-huh.
I said, "Okay." So I think I got 2 rolls of film.
2 rolls of film. Goodness. All right. So we got through all the portrait section here.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit, I guess, about some other things. So we've been looking through a lot of photos. So I want to talk about this transition you're making now.
Oh gosh.
Because I remember when I was a student, 10, 15 years ago, and then going into the professional world, the idea was, you got to get a staff position. That's where it's all at. And then I started hearing people talking about freelance. One of Thomas Whitty who is a photographer, came to our school, talked about how he's always been a freelancer and, controls his own stock and this and that. And of course I would love to have had a great job, a staffer at a newspaper like you, but I never have. I've never been staffer, and I've never had to kind of go through that transition. And I've talked to a lot of photographers like yourself. Well, you're kind of one of the exceptions. Is there's a couple people here that just left the Times and have had a career as a staffer for decades and decades and decades. And so I can't imagine what it would be like to kind of have to start from scratch now. Because like we were talking about, you need to think about your website, you need to think about your archives, you need to think about, how you're going to build your clients. Are you working just for the Times now? I mean, I know you're still doing some stuff for the Times.
Occasionally. I did the dog show recently, and I think the Explorers Club, last weekend.
Right.
A couple other jobs. Mostly I've been working on another project, which is commercial,
Uh-huh.
which is also incredibly different because I have to go to meetings.
Yeah, and you have to take conference calls.
And it's like, I did everything in my power to avoid going to any meeting, like when I was at the New York Times,
Right.
because you're not taking any pictures in meetings.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, why go to a meeting?
Clients love to feel like they're really ready to
No, I know. And so it's a very, very different experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still learning. And like I said, I mean, the first thing I did was to put up a website. And now my kids say, Dad, you got to change your website. And I says, okay. And
your website's very basic right now.
I know, but
It's something.
well, I
It's
mean,
something.
I was a little dismayed when someone with my name was a DUI lawyer.
Yeah, I was going to say, I went to fredconrad.com, and it was a DUI lawyer in Florida. So if anyone's in Florida and
Right.
gets pulled over,
Yeah.
that's fredconrad.com.
So if you want to see my pictures, it's Fred R. Conrad.
R, yeah, middle initial,
Don't forget the R. But so yeah, no, it is different. I mean, I'm going to be teaching like a class at ICP. Like in the
yeah,
summertime.
that's great. So you're going to get into teaching a little bit?
A little bit. I mean, it's strange because I've sort of avoided trying to do teaching.
Yeah.
Because taking pictures is a lot more fun.
Right.
But ICP approached me about doing a class on architectural photography.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And I said, where would I do it? And so I got this bright idea of spending, like 2 days, like in Woodlawn Cemetery, like doing the architecture, and really delving into, like the history and all the different architectural forms
Yeah.
and different, techniques, because it really is sort of nice now to try and make those connections.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times when you're working, you know what you're doing, or you think you know what you're doing, but mostly you're producing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to look at it more analytically and start reading and thinking, well, what am I going to do in class to teach somebody? Then all of a sudden you start making really interesting connections between different photographers, different times, periods, and styles.
Right.
And then, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's going to be really cool, especially for the students. It'll be great for you too. Architecture photography is a feat. It's one of the things that I've done, but I'm not the best at it. Are you going to be like using the different tilt shift lenses and stuff like that? And because it really does make a difference. I've been hired to do some facades of some buildings, and when you can straighten out some lines, it's.
Is it possible to go to my website?
Yeah.
It's
Oops, no, not iMessage. Sorry. Let's see here. Fred
rconrad.com.
.com. Okay. See if it comes up. We have.
There we go.
There we go. So this is your main thing. Got your archive here.
Yeah. We'll just scroll through, and I can show you a couple of the like the architectural shots. I mean, this is actually the cover picture is actually taken from the roof of the new New York Times building.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you've taken advantage of that. I remember seeing it seems like whenever I see a roof shot from the New York Times, it's always your photos.
Right. Well, the architect wasn't very considerate because he put a barrier that blocks you except for the corners.
Oh.
So you can only shoot in a corner that's about 2 feet.
Right.
Everything else is, you have to shoot through glass.
Right. Looks like we're having some issues going to whatever this.
Did go to the archive?
I did.
Yeah.
It's trying.
Yeah, it's trying. It's
There
trying.
it comes. Here it comes. Churn, baby, churn.
It's okay, but no, it's when I was in college, I went for 1 quarter to RIT, and I dropped out because I knew I couldn't afford, all of the number of years I would need to get before getting a degree. And I went to my instructor and told him I was dropping out, and he was, he said, "I'm sad to see you go because, you're one of only 2 in my class who are going to be photographers." And he said, "I want to sell you a camera." And I said, "Well, I can't afford it." He says, "Well, no, it's you can afford this." I still had to send home for money, but my professor sold me a 4x5 Deerdorf. And he told me, he said, the only thing you lack is patience. And if you put up your Leica and shoot with this deer door for a year, you will learn patience.
Ah.
And he was very right about that.
And so and is this, you still have this camera?
Yeah. And so that's how I started using like larger cameras.
Uh-huh.
And so, like doing architectural photography in, like in New York, is really neat because it's such an incredible place.
Mm-hmm.
And doing it well and doing it on a large format, is even more rewarding.
Right.
For me.
So let's talk a little bit about social media. We're changing topics a little bit here.
Instagram.
You're an Instagrammer now.
I am.
You're on Facebook. You've been on Facebook for no, you haven't.
No.
You're recently on.
No.
You're new adoptee to everything.
My wife said, I think on the drive, from the times
on your last day.
On my last day, says you need to be on Facebook.
Yes, you do.
Really?
What is the Facebook? He says. Gosh.
Well, but look, it's here, and it's I find it interesting being interested in politics, knowing that the upcoming election will be essentially the first Instagram presidential election. And I have a feeling that it will change, like the coverage in so many ways.
Uh-huh. So here's your Instagram feed. You had mentioned that you do, you post photos actually. So you do it a different way.
Oh, you got to.
Oh, this is awful, man.
Yeah.
So
you got to see this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is this was the annual Explorers Club dinner that was held at the Museum of Natural History.
Right. Yeah.
And this guy is chomping down on the tempura tarantula.
Tempura tarantula. It's got to be the worst thing I've ever seen. I don't know about that.
No, there's actually a couple of pictures here that are worse. There they are, fresh out of the oven.
Yeah.
Keep going. Oh, they're the grasshoppers on a stick with peppers.
I didn't know tarantulas were something you eat early.
Yeah, there's another one there. I think go to this one.
Oh.
Yeah, this is the American cockroach on cream cheese and endive.
Oh gosh. Oh, that's awful. Oh, so we got the architectural photography that we were talking about before. I think he's going to switch it up on the screen here so we can look at it. But yeah, we're talking. Where are they? Oh, well, they're coming up, I think. No, they're not on the screens behind us though, so we can't see them really. Oh well, we'll.
You can scroll down. Let's see what else did I do on Instagram there.
And so. Have you enjoyed it? Do you like getting the sort of interaction that we were like before? You would just everything would be in the paper and that was it. You'd maybe hear some things from you wouldn't hear from the readers so much, but now you get the sort of instant.
I think I had 2 followers. Here, go to this picture.
This one right here.
Until the dog show.
And the dog show blew you up, huh?
Yeah.
It's amazing how one thing can just like get you to go viral. That's what it's all about these days,
Well, Bill Cunningham, who you know,
right,
who is 85 years old and still working at the New York Times.
So he has called me, by the way, every time I go in. We've met when I was an intern, but I've been in the office a few times, and he says, "Hello, young man." And he says that to everybody.
You will always be young man.
And then he calls me. He mistakes me for Vincent Laforet. And one time in the restroom, he comes up next to me in the stall, and he looks at me and goes, "Well, hello, Cheng." He thinks I'm Cheng Li. I'm like, not Cheng Li. That was a good one.
Well, Bill saw this picture, and he just loved it. And so. It's sort of nice to connect. Even because if anyone's a Luddite, like Bill Cunningham.
Oh yeah. He's the only one.
He doesn't have a cell phone.
So yeah, he shoots. I mean, when I saw him in the office working, because he does this the styles section like twice weekly, or at least he used to.
He does 2 columns. One is like fashion on the street,
right,
and the other one is the party column.
And he shoots it all film. Or at least he used to.
He's switching, I think, to digital now.
But I mean, he was the only person. He has this little TV monitor,
right,
and
right.
I don't even know what this thing is.
I think they've actually managed to switch him to digital.
Oh, that's good.
But what's wonderful about like the New York Times is like how many really incredibly talented people it attracts.
Yeah.
And of course, Bill is a treasure, like much larger than the New York Times.
Yeah.
But I remember years ago, my wife was Bill's editor in the style section.
We should mention your wife, Tina, is a longtime editor at the New York Times.
Yeah, she's a photo
Yep.
editor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every smart photographer should marry a good photo editor.
I married a great photo editor, video editor, and graphic designer.
Very good. So, Tina got a call from Bill telling her to tear up that week's column. He says, I found something. I don't know what it is, but it's fantastic. I'll be in soon. And what Bill had done is he had run into the NBA Players Union had a strike vote. And their offices, I think, were in the GM Tower, which is right near Bergdorf Goodman, which is where he hangs out and does all of his fashion pictures,
Right.
like during the day. And he saw all of these ball players dressed in incredible fashion, and he started taking pictures. And he didn't know who they were, had no idea. And they had an outdoor press conference, and all of the other papers, all of the wires were there. Bill was the only person that photographed these players as a fashion shoot.
Yeah, yeah.
And he brought the pictures in. They identified everybody in the sports department. And it was one of the most memorable columns. And of course, when you see a 7-foot-tall man wearing a white ermine bomber jacket,
Right, yeah.
you're like, you have Bill's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what he's done, just alone, he's such an interesting person. He used to live in Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, the towers.
Yeah. This artist
Before
community.
he was displaced.
Yeah, before he was displaced. And there's a whole movie that was
right.
created about him. I forget what it's called now, but Bill Cunningham, I'm sure you can find it on Netflix. But he's really done a amazing job at sort of capturing the history of fashion throughout the years, the change in fashion, even from week to week, month to month, year to year. And he's been doing it for 50 plus years.
Well, Bill started out as designing and making hats. Mm-hmm. And when his shop folded, he moved to Paris, and he was taught photography while living, like in a garret in Paris by some French photographer. And when he came back and he started working, he created, like the fashion in the street.
Right.
And he was shooting for, I think, Women's Wear Daily.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, Women's Wear Daily hired a photo editor who wanted to take charge. And that upset Bill. Bill didn't say anything.
Yeah.
He just marched over to the New York Times and said, would you like me to do my street column for you?
Likely he biked over to the New York Times on his bike.
Well, the Women's Wear Daily offices were within walking distance. And he's been at the New York Times ever since.
Yeah, yeah.
And, just a real treasure.
Yeah, he's great. Let's go through a few more of your photos because we're about an hour in here. I want to show because you're mostly known for. I would say that you're known a lot for your portraiture these days, but you are a photojournalist. You've been a photojournalist for so many years. You've covered a lot of really interesting
conflicts.
Conflicts and whatnot.
This was like in '91 in the Kurds. They were forced up into the mountains by Saddam after Desert Storm, and. This was, back then we were shooting, black and white film, and I was developing it in a toilet.
Were you really? Wow.
Yeah. I felt lucky because I had running water in a toilet. The reporters, John Kiffner and Chuck Sudetic, were in a truck stop, which was much more primitive and no flush toilets.
Oh, man.
They used to come to my room to go to the bathroom
in your developing tank.
Yeah. And I said, don't stir up, like the sediment too much.
What is it like? Going on an assignment like that, did you feel at all ever worried for your safety? Given that they were pushed out, for a reason.
No, by the time, I had arrived, the area was pretty much stabilized because there was a no-fly zone established by the U.S. military.
Right.
And the Saddam's forces were in retreat.
But
again, it was, it's a rather chaotic kind of a situation. You're taking photographs. You don't understand, like necessarily the global aspects of what is actually happening. It wasn't until, like a year or so later that we actually realized that the NGOs and the U.S. military had actually worked together for the first time successfully and actually saved tens of thousands of lives by evacuating these people out of the mountains. But no, it was, I've done a few stories like that. After my kids came, I decided there had to be something else more interesting.
Yep. Well, a little bit more safe and a little bit keeps you in. So, I mean, this is this is spring training, was it?
This was spring training in Arizona, and we went behind the scenes. And of course, to me, the mere idea of how much laundry they have to do, and the fans, and it was fun.
It's fun taking, because you never really. I mean, I'm sure you've shot sports in your day, but not much.
No, the people at the times who were very much interested in sports,
Barton,
would kill you
if you even touched it. Don't even go.
No, I mean it was a no-fly zone.
Right.
And so my interest in sports and sports is interesting, has mostly to do with behind the scenes and portraiture.
Right. And what's neat about, I think that's really great about, it's hilarious. What's really great about, I think, sending a person that doesn't shoot sports to a sporting event is you get this whole new take, whole new look on it. And I used to shoot sports all of the time. Like when I was in college, ever since I was in high school, I started with sports. I started selling prints to parents, and paid for my whole college tuition through that, business.
I wish I had known that.
Well,
it's possible.
Well,
I built tires at Goodyear.
Oh, did you? Wow. Built tires are good. But I mean, as I changed it up a bit, what was I going to say? So I started, at the New York Times, I shot, I think, almost every game that summer for the New York Times of the Yankees. And after a bit, it just got really tiring because the same pretty much thing over and over. When you're shooting action sports for the paper, especially in the digital age, they want the picture right now. And then
they want it before it happens.
They want it before it happens, and then you spend all this time getting those images in, and then while you're getting it in, or something happens, the big play of the game, and either you got it or you didn't. And even if you have the best sports image ever, if it's not that bat on ball of that action or that absolute moment, it's going to be a wire shot that they run it anyway.
Yeah. No, it's very frustrating. And I talked to David Burnett, who's gone to several Olympics, and he was telling me, like how different it is now, because people will be shooting all day long, and then they'll be processing all night long, and they have no idea what country they're in, because they don't have time to even go out to a restaurant,
right? Because
they have a 6:30 a.m. call for a venue the following morning.
Yeah, I have no desire to do anything like that, to be honest with you.
There was a big difference between, like the film days, especially for people who were shooting in magazines, where people would shoot and ship, because it gave them an opportunity not only to socialize amongst themselves, but also to absorb, like the country and the culture that they were in.
Yeah,
a lot of that's changed now. I mean, it's just. It's just very different.
Are you in these photos here, or do you have an assistant holding a strobe, or are you setting up
Actually, it was a student.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was a professor at Arizona State, and she volunteered like some of her students. I would take one out like each day to like a different like stadium, and so it was like all strobe off camera.
Nice.
But it's with that wonderful sun, it's just like now you have two lights instead of one.
Yep. Absolutely. And sort of matching that.
This was like rookie initiation, where they have to do skits. And that old guy.
Yeah, who's he?
Well, he'd been a minor league coach, and this was the first year he's up in the bigs.
Oh yeah, way to get his first photo in the New York Times as a big league coach. Yeah. We're kind of getting towards the end here, but I'm curious, just like from your perception, from when you started to nowadays, maybe your last year at the Times,
Mm-hmm.
what's the biggest difference, would you say, in in general? There's obviously a workflow different. Well, not so much for you because you shoot a lot of film, but
Well,
a lot's changed in 30, 40 years.
Yeah, it's, yes, a lot has changed. There used to be, like a congregation at the end of the day on the light table when we were shooting film, where photographers would look at each other's film, photographers would talk to editors, editors would talk to photographers.
Right.
And it was a learning experience. Okay. Even if you didn't need to be there, you wanted to be there because you were going to learn from other people's experiences.
Yeah.
Stories that they told about assignments. You could see their film.
Right.
You could see how, you could see their mistakes.
Right.
You could see where they put their mistakes. It would probably be in the dumpster.
But,
it was, now a lot of that's changed. I don't see that interaction.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
It's, the interaction between photographers and editors sometimes. It's email.
It's all, yeah, you're right. You're right.
And
not even so much over the phone even.
Yeah. And it's, I miss that.
What's funny is I find it to be, and hopefully editors are listening, but it's really nice to like even hear back from an editor after you've done a shoot. So there are very few editors that will. There are very few editors that will actually send you a note, say, "Hey, Robert, I really thank you so much. I got your photos. Great job." And just that is just like, okay, great. Acknowledgement of.
Listen, that's wonderful. The only thing greater is when the check arrives.
When the check arrives. Yeah. Well,
you want to go to the architecture?
Oh, yeah.
Is it up yet?
Oh, your website here.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm sure it probably is at this point. Let's see here. Fred R. Conrad. Okay. So this is one of the things about your site. I gotta say the photos are very small.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to see.
Yeah, we gotta change that.
We'll get you. Don't worry. I'm gonna.
This was actually an interesting. This was actually a story on. The Times did a series on race in America. And this was a slave cabin. And the person in the doorway, his father was born in that cabin.
Oh, wow.
He wasn't a slave. He was a sharecropper. But the man in the doorway had all these mixed feelings because his father so hated it, and yet he was now being paid union wages to restore it. And so...
Wow.
But, again, at the time, it wasn't really possible to do this on digital.
Right.
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, we got to get you some categories.
All right.
Got some. Where's this shot from?
The roof of the New York Times.
Oh, okay. I got to get up there one of these days. See, the newsroom's only like on the fourth floor, second, third, fourth floor. There's no views really.
There's no view.
It's all it's the New York Times building. Is it administration up top, or is it sold out to other companies?
I think most of the tenants here. Oh, go back to Mario.
Oops. Previous. Okay.
Yeah, this was a picture I took years ago for the Sunday magazine that was never published. But when I heard that Mario had died, my wife encouraged me to find it and get it to the Times in time. So it was on his obit, and they ran it. But he wanted to be photographed like that in large part because at the line of the shadow. He had a scratch from a pickup basketball game.
Oh, really? And that's the thing about working for publications like the New York Times. We as journalists, obviously you shoot commercial. We all shoot a little bit of this and that now. But when you're shooting journalism, you can't go in and zap that out for the New York Times.
No,
it's really.
I could do it with lighting.
Oh, yeah, right.
But if you look at it closely on the print that I have framed, like in my dining room, you can see it.
That was the one thing I remember about your house because I came out when I was an intern, and you have all these amazing portraits. Do you still have those up, I imagine?
I do. When we moved to the suburbs from the city,
This is a very Arnold Newman-esque feel.
Well, this is Ellsworth Kelly, and he would just he has emphysema, and he doesn't move well without oxygen. But
ever tell you my Arnold Newman story?
No.
He's the reason why I came out to New York for the first time.
Really?
He spoke at Ohio University, and I got to show him my portfolio. And in that talk, he says to me, well, I like your work. Next time you're in New York, come out here. Let me know, and I'll buy you a sandwich. And so I'm like, and the next day I booked a flight. Then for a month later, I said, I emailed him. Just so happens that I'll be out in town, and his advice to me, he showed me all around his offices, his print club, or his not print club, his printing printing rooms and everything, and his main bit of advice was to put a comb through my hair. I suppose when you're in your upper 80s, anything goes. That's fine. I said absolutely.
Did you get a sandwich?
I did. He did. They ordered in. He had one of his 20 assistants.
What kind?
I don't remember the kind of sandwich. I believe I was more just like, I'll do whatever you say. Just tell me what you want. I wasn't used to the whole delivery food situation in New York at that time. So
hopefully he had better advice than getting a comb.
Well, it was interesting because I had thought about the idea of maybe interning under him, not interning, but assisting him or something. And then I saw the work that his assistants had to do. It was just spotting prints, He was selling those prints like crazy at the end there.
Yeah.
So, Fred, was there anything else that you want to chat about that's upcoming that you might want to give a shout out to before we close things out? What's the future hold for you, Fred?
Well, I'm going to New Orleans.
Oh yeah, but that's a little bit of fun, right?
I don't know. Is there something up there that says Easter?
Oh yeah, the Easter pictures. Sorry about that. Let's see here if we can find my.
I just wanted,
Easter
my youngest daughter for many years has been very, very shy. So a couple years ago, I made her come to New York and help me photograph the Easter parade, be my lighting assistant, only to throw her in to a crowd of hundreds of people,
right,
just to get her over, the anxiety of being around crowds.
Sure.
And so this is what we do every Easter: is cover the parade. And I have to tell you, it worked. She's no longer shy.
Oh, that's good. That is surprising to hear that your daughter is.
Well, I have two
shy.
daughters. I have two daughters. One is shy, and the other one will talk to strangers ever since she was 3.
Oh, okay.
So they're very different.
Yeah. This seems to be how it is. Yeah. Easter.
So that's coming up in a week or so.
Are you going to shoot it again this year?
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's I've actually gotten to know some of the regulars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many different parades there are in New York City to be
covered.
covered.
It was interesting. I had done a lens piece,
Lens blog
on
New York Times.
Joel Meyerowitz. And he was telling a story about how when he was in his 20s, he would go and shoot parades along Fifth Avenue because he was too shy to take pictures of people directly. And he actually ran into Cartier-Bresson one day.
Oh yeah.
And ran after him.
Ran after him, yeah, I would too.
So yeah, so go to the lens piece. I think he tells this story there, and but parades are wonderful because you do get kind of lost in the mix.
Yeah,
and it's fun because people who are shy about taking photographs of people, all of a sudden can take as many pictures as they want.
Right. Absolutely, and this is a Knights. I'm just going through this gallery here.
These are crazy guys that beat the crap out of each other in full armor.
Jousting and whatnot.
Yeah, they have international competitions. The Russians have one every year.
Well, because of Mr. Putin. And sure, yeah. Actually, we're nearing the end. Basically, I mean, so you're going to New Orleans. Everything seems to be going well with you.
I'm learning a lot.
You're learning a lot.
I'm learning a lot.
And I think that it'd be fun to maybe follow up with you in a year or two and see where things have taken you.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
You're on.
Okay, so everybody can go see Fred online at fredrconrad.com.
Don't expect any advice on DUI.
Nope, that'd be the other Fred Conrad. And then the same thing on social media. You're on the Twitter?
Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And Facebook, Fred R. Conrad. And I want to also mention before we leave here that you guys, anybody that's watching can check out photobrigade.com and click the live button to see this podcast, any other streaming podcasts, all our upcoming events, which we host. Fred, you have been a gem. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, take care.